truth.
There are songs that become hits, and then there are songs that become memories. Careless Whisper wasn't just a hit, it became the sound of heartbreak for an entire generation. But behind the smooth saxophone and George Michael's flawless vocals, there's a story. One of teenage guilt, studio failure, and a version of the song they tried to bury forever. It all started on a bus. George Michael was just 17, a quiet kid with big dreams and a head full of melodies. He was on his way to work, just another routine day. But right as he stepped onto the bus and handed over his fare, a melody struck him. A haunting saxophone line. It came out of nowhere, but it lodged itself in his brain like a ghost. For months it stayed with him. He couldn't shake it. Then, one afternoon, George was hanging out with his best friend and musical partner, Andrew Ridgely. Andrew was strumming out this cool little guitar riff, just playing around. And instantly, George's ears perked up. That riff, that rhythm, it fit the melody in his head. He grabbed a pen and started scribbling lyrics, fast. He didn't need to search for inspiration. He already had it. The lyrics came straight from his own life. When George was about 12, he had a huge crush on a girl named Jane. He'd met her at a roller skating rink where his sister used to hang out. But George was this shy, chubby kid with thick glasses. He figured he didn't stand a chance. Fast forward a few years, he's 16 now. He's lost weight, ditched the glasses, and started singing in a local ska band called The Executives. He's dating a girl named Helen. Things are going well. Then Jane comes back into the picture. Suddenly, she's interested in him. George can't believe it, his old crush finally noticing him. And here's where things get complicated. He never broke up with Helen. Instead, he found himself caught between two girls, one from his past, one from his present. He was juggling them both until it all came crashing down. The guilt stayed with him, and that guilt became Careless Whisper.
Was the humor, the vitality, the exuberance of youth.
Hey, sucker.
It was about us as youths, and it represented the optimism and the drive and the aspiration of youth and the limitless horizons of youth.
Those lyrics, I'm never gonna dance again, guilty feet have got no rhythm, so they weren't made up.
I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm.
They were confessions set to music. At one point, George even considered naming the song Guilty Feet. But Careless Whisper had a better ring to it, more poetic, more mysterious, and it captured the feeling perfectly. That sting of regret you can't take back. The song became one of the first three that George and Andrew wrote together for Wham, right alongside Wham Rap and Club Tropicana. It was the song that got them their first record deal, but strangely, it didn't make the cut for Wham's debut album. George believed in it. He knew it could be massive, but he didn't believe in himself, at least not yet. At one point, he even thought about giving the song away to someone else. He didn't think he was good enough to sing it. Then came the real problem. Wham was stuck in a nightmare contract with a label called Intervision Records. The label owned the rights to everything. George and Andrew were making music, but barely making money. And when George decided he wanted Careless Whisper to be his first solo single, the label tried to block it. That led to a legal battle, and a lesson George would never forget. Own your music. Protect your art. Eventually, he broke free, signed with Epic Records, and got to release the song on his own terms. But that first version of Careless Whisper, it didn't go how he imagined. George flew to the legendary Muscle Shoals sound studio in Alabama, home of some of the greatest soul records ever made. His producer was Jerry Wexler, a legend, the man behind Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, and Wilson Pickett.
It's produced by Jerry Wexler. I went over to Muscle Shoals studio, where a lot of the famous Atlantic records, i.e. Aretha Franklin, Percy Sledge, Ray Charles. I mean, I actually had to sing in the same booth that they sang in, and actually to the same producer that they sang to. So if I sound nervous, I simply understand why.
George was nervous, too nervous. So nervous, in fact, he showed up drunk to the recording session. And it shows. That version, full of tension, hesitation, and shaky vocals, didn't have the magic. George hated it. He went home, took a deep breath, and made a bold decision. He'd re-record the song. But this time, he'd do it his way.
Friends, and I was complaining about the fact that something like 5 or 6 of the records in the top 30 at a particular time were based around a sample of a drum track, which was the intro to a James Brown song called Funky Drummer, which has now become like the most well-used drum track of all time, I would imagine. And I had this idea of taking that particular drum track and placing something completely different, something completely out of context over the top of it. The drum track is this. Hopefully it should come up now.
No legendary producers, just the musicians he trusted, and full creative control.
Come on. And that is actually the sample of the James Brown record, but it's slowed down. It's been slowed down for a number of other records. And then I thought I'd put something completely folk over the top of it. We've got some backing vocals there, but this is the guitar line. Which obviously is about as unblack as you can get. And then mix the two. Then add a little bit of bass.
It was a gamble, but it worked. Now let's talk about that iconic sax solo, the part that makes the song instantly recognizable. George had a specific sound in his head, and he wouldn't settle. They auditioned 8 different saxophone players. Each time, George would say, "That's not it." Finally, in walked Steve Gregory. He heard what George wanted and realized something. It wasn't the notes that were hard, it was the feel, the tone. So Steve asked the engineer to slow down the tape. He recorded the solo a half step lower. When they sped the tape back up to normal speed, it created this slightly surreal, slightly off-kilter sound. A sound that felt both smooth and haunted. It was perfect. George walked back into the studio, heard it once, and said, "That's it." That saxophone solo, it's never been performed the same way since. Even Steve says he can't quite replicate it live. It was lightning in a bottle. Careless Whisper ended up on Wham's second album, but only in name. In the UK, it was released as a George Michael solo track. The label didn't think the moody ballad fit Wham's fun bubblegum image. In the rest of the world, the cover still said, "Wham featuring George Michael." But everyone knew, this wasn't a Wham song. This was George Michael's breakout moment. And there's more. There are actually 2 music videos for the song, one made using the original Jerry Wexler version, and another shot later using George's re-recorded version, the one we all know now. That second video became iconic. George wandering through dim hotel rooms, lost in thought, staring out windows. It captured the loneliness at the heart of the song. Not anger, not jealousy, just sorrow.
pretend. I know you're not a fool. Should've known better than to cheat a friend and waste the chance that I've been given. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you.
Careless Whisper became a global phenomenon, #1 in over 20 countries, and to this day, it's one of the most played songs of the 1980s. But here's the twist. George Michael didn't really understand why it was so beloved. He admitted that he was never quite sure what made it special. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't always have to understand why something moves us. Sometimes it just does. In 1985, Smokey Robinson performed Careless Whisper with George at the Apollo Theater's 50th anniversary show. A full circle moment, a soul legend honoring a young pop star who had poured his teenage guilt into a ballad. George Michael would go on to write deeper songs, bigger songs, but Careless Whisper would always follow him, the song he almost gave away, the version he tried to bury, the one that never quite made sense to him, but meant everything to everyone else. And maybe that's why it still hits so hard, because it was real, because it was flawed, because it came from a 17-year-old on a bus, haunted by a saxophone he hadn't heard yet. That's the story behind Careless Whisper, and that's why we'll never stop listening.